This day at the community center was supposed to be just another ordinary one for Peter Parker, who had come to help organize the Children's Science Festival. But no one could have predicted that simple volunteering would turn into a real challenge, not only for Spider-Man but for everyone present. What happens next will change the lives of many and reveal the true power of kindness and justice. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and don't miss new videos every day at 2 o'clock. Peter Parker stood at the registration desk of the community center, helping put up colorful posters for the upcoming Children's Science Festival. His simple outfit, a blue t-shirt, a brown jacket, and jeans, blended in with the other volunteers. Large windows let in warm sunlight, creating a cozy atmosphere in the spacious hall. A science festival is exactly what these kids need, Peter thought as he carefully secured another poster. Maybe one of them will grow to love science as much as I do. Around him, the center was bustling with activity. Volunteers carried boxes of equipment, teachers discussed the arrangement of exhibition stands, and children, already arriving with their projects, excitedly examined the festival's decorations. Peter couldn't help but smile, remembering his own school days and early science experiments. "Hey, Peter!" Mrs. Chen, the event coordinator, called out. "Can you help set up tables in the main hall? We need more space for presentations." "Of course," Peter eagerly responded, glad for a chance to use his spider strength for something simple and useful. Though, of course, he had to hold back so as not to reveal his true abilities. On his way to the main hall, he stopped to help a small boy struggling with a bulky project. "Here, let me give you a hand," Peter offered, carefully taking the model, a cleverly designed mechanism. "This looks impressive. Did you come up with it yourself?" The boy's eyes lit up, and he enthusiastically started explaining his invention. Peter listened attentively, asking questions and offering advice as they made their way to the registration area. Moments like these reminded him why he had volunteered for this event, to support young talents who might one day change the world for the better. He only wished Aunt May could have been there today. She would have been proud to see her nephew helping organize such an important event. But she had a good reason to be absent, an extra shift at the hospital. We both help people in our own way, Peter thought as he headed toward the main hall. A sudden conflict erupted in the main hall of the community center. A tall man in an expensive suit, who introduced himself as Mr. Thompson, the event's sponsor, was aggressively scolding a young contest participant. Her alternative energy project had accidentally splashed water on his costly suit. "Do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" he fumed, pointing a finger at the frightened girl. "Kids like you should know your place. Who even let children from the foster home in here?" Peter, witnessing the scene, felt anger rising inside him. He knew all too well what it was like to be an outcast, judged by social status. The girl, named Sarah, was struggling to hold back tears as she gathered the scattered pieces of her project. Her hands trembled, and her worn uniform had a small stain from the spilled water, the same water she had used to demonstrate her device. I didn't mean to. It was an accident." She tried to explain, but Mr. Thompson wouldn't let her finish. "An accident?" He raised his voice even more, drawing the attention of those around them. "Maybe you shouldn't have come here at all? These events are for those who can afford it." Other festival participants turned to see what was happening. Some parents instinctively pulled their children closer, while others shook their heads in disapproval. But no one dared to step in. Mrs. Chen attempted to intervene, but one of Mr. Thompson's assistants quietly reminded her how important the sponsor's support was for the center. Peter saw Sarah's lower lip quiver as she looked up, meeting Mr. Thompson's contemptuous glare. In that moment, he saw himself in her, the same insecure teenager who had once been bullied at school, unaware of his hidden potential. "I suppose I should have expected something like this from a foster kid," Mr. Thompson sneered, adjusting his tie. "No respect for other people's property, no understanding of value." Each of his words hit Sarah like a blow, making her shrink further. Peter saw how the excitement she had just half an hour ago, while explaining her invention, was fading from her eyes. "Enough," Peter said firmly, stepping between the man and the girl. My uncle always said that with great power comes great responsibility. And right now, I see someone with great power using it to intimidate a child." Mr. Thompson was taken aback by such boldness. "And who do you think you are?" he growled. "Just someone who knows what it's like to be underestimated," Peter calmly replied. "And you know what? Her project on clean energy could change thousands of lives. And you're worried about a stain on your suit?" A tense silence filled the hall. Everyone held their breath, watching the confrontation. Behind him, Peter sensed Sarah stop trembling as she realized she wasn't alone. "Do you even know who you're talking to, kid?" Mr. Thompson stepped closer, towering over Peter. "I fund half the programs in this center. One word from me, and you'll be thrown out along with this failure." Peter didn't move. His spider sense told him that the situation was escalating, but he couldn't allow this injustice to continue. "You know what's sad?" he said, looking straight into Mr. Thompson's eyes. "That someone in your position could inspire these kids, support their dreams. Instead, you're crushing them." Behind him, Sarah sniffled quietly. Peter felt her gently touch his shoulder. "It's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to stand up for me. I'll just leave." "No," Peter responded firmly, not turning around. "You have just as much right to be here as everyone else. Even more, you created something truly important." Mr. Thompson's face darkened. A few people in the crowd started nodding in agreement with Peter's words, which seemed to anger the businessman even more. "You'll regret this," he hissed, pulling out his phone. "Security will be here any second, and we'll see how smart you are then." Peter knew the situation was spiraling out of control. He could easily handle any security guards, but that would mean exposing his secret. He needed another way. "I've heard that real sponsors support science and education, not intimidate children." A familiar voice rang out from above. Everyone looked up and gasped. Perched on a beam near the ceiling was none other than Spider-Man. Sunlight streaming through the high windows gave him an almost mystical glow. The children in the hall excitedly pointed, exclaiming, "Look! It's Spider-Man!" Leaping down and landing between the guards and Sarah, he continued, "You know, I was once just a kid who loved science. And I know for a fact that talent can be found in the most unexpected places." The security guards hesitated, exchanging glances. Kicking out a couple of teenagers was one thing, confronting a famous superhero was another. What are you doing here?" Mr. Thompson stammered, trying to maintain his stern tone, though his voice wavered. "Oh, I was just swinging by," Spider-Man replied casually, straightening a fallen poster. "Heard someone talking about science and education, my favorite subjects. By the way, young lady," he turned to Sarah, "I overheard a bit about your project." "Something about harnessing rain energy? Sounds amazing." Sarah, still in disbelief, nodded shyly. Her hands stopped trembling, and a spark of hope returned to her eyes. And with that, the science festival was about to become something much more, a lesson in courage, kindness, and the true meaning of power. "My project uses the kinetic energy of raindrops to generate electricity," Sarah said, her voice trembling at first but growing more confident as she explained. "In poor areas where I live, power outages happen all the time. This system could help many families." Spider-Man nodded encouragingly, assisting her in demonstrating the device. "Look," he pointed to small metallic plates. "Each raindrop that falls on these plates creates a tiny electrical impulse. Individually, it's not much, but when it rains, there's enough energy to charge a phone or power a light," Sarah added, her eyes shining with excitement. "I did the calculations. If these panels were installed on rooftops, they could generate enough electricity for basic appliances during a downpour." Mr. Thompson leaned in, his irritation giving way to genuine curiosity. "And how do you store the energy?" he asked, his tone notably different. "Oh, that's the most interesting part." Sarah opened a small compartment at the base of the device. "See these capacitors? I modified them using recycled materials. That makes the system not only efficient but also affordable to produce. Amazing, right? Spider-Man turned to Mr. Thompson. A simple solution that could help thousands of people. And yet you were ready to dismiss this girl, who, by the way, according to you, didn't even belong here. The crowd around them grew. Other festival participants, teachers, and parents listened with admiration. Some took notes on their phones, while others recorded the presentation. You know what's truly remarkable about this project? Spider-Man continued. It's not just science for the sake of science. It's a real solution to a real problem affecting real people. Isn't that what progress is all about? Mr. Thompson's expression gradually changed as he realized the true value of the project. He opened his mouth as if to say something, then closed it, searching for the right words. Finally, after a deep breath, he spoke. I must admit, I was wrong, he said, his voice softer than before. This is truly impressive. And I'm ashamed of my behavior. Turning to Sarah, he continued, I apologize for what I said. You've shown me that true talent can come from anywhere. How about my company funds the further development of your project? The entire hall fell silent. Sarah stood frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief. Spider-Man nodded approvingly. Furthermore, Mr. Thompson added, straightening his posture, I'd like to establish a special scholarship for talented children from foster homes. Every child with a dream and a passion for science deserves a chance. A wave of murmurs spread through the crowd, quickly turning into applause. First a few people, then more and more, until the entire hall erupted in cheers. See? Spider-Man muttered to himself. Sometimes people just need a reminder of what really matters. Mrs. Chen, wiping away tears of joy, rushed over with paperwork to formalize the scholarship. The security guards, who had been ready to escort Sarah out, now respectfully stepped aside, making way for other festival participants eager to congratulate the young inventor. You know what? Mr. Thompson suddenly said, looking at the stain on his suit. Let's make this a tradition. Every year at the Science Festival, I'll wear this exact suit, as a reminder that appearance and status mean nothing compared to talent and perseverance. You see how things can be resolved without aggression? Spider-Man watched as Mr. Thompson shook hands with the young inventor while other festival participants gathered around to admire her project. The atmosphere in the hall had completely transformed. Where fear and tension once dominated, now there was an air of creativity and mutual understanding. Parents who had earlier pulled their children away now brought them closer to Sarah's project, encouraging them to ask questions and learn more. You know what's most amazing? Spider-Man mused aloud to the crowd. Sometimes, it takes just one moment, one decision, to change someone's life. Today, we witnessed not just reconciliation, we saw hope being born. Sarah, now surrounded by interested peers, eagerly explained the mechanics of her invention. Her eyes sparkled with happiness, and her hands no longer shook as she proudly demonstrated her device's components. Mr. Thompson, no longer concerned about his stained suit, was already discussing details of the new scholarship program with Mrs. Chen. We need to make this an annual event, he said enthusiastically. Every talented child deserves a chance. Other sponsors, impressed by the turn of events, began approaching as well, offering additional support. Some discussed providing equipment for future projects, while others suggested establishing a special lab for young inventors from underprivileged backgrounds. Sometimes heroes don't wear masks and costumes, Spider-Man whispered, watching Sarah's transformation. Sometimes they wear a worn-out school uniform and dream of changing the world through science. From a high window of the community center, Spider-Man took one last look at the transformed hall. The golden glow of the setting sun bathed the room in warm light, creating an almost magical atmosphere. The festival had regained its energy, and a growing crowd surrounded Sarah's project, buzzing with excitement. You know, he addressed the now attentive audience. I deal with all sorts of threats in the city. But sometimes, the most important battles aren't fought against supervillains in the streets. They happen in places like this, where the future of young minds is decided. Mr. Thompson, now surrounded by other sponsors, was already making plans to expand support for young scientists. His tie was slightly loosened, and there was an unmistakable enthusiasm in his eyes, completely different from the arrogant businessman he had been an hour ago. "There's power in all of us to make the world a better place," Spider-Man continued. "Sometimes, all it takes is giving others a chance to prove themselves and believing in their potential. Don't judge people by where they come from or how they look, judge them by their actions and dreams." Sarah, noticing him by the window, shyly waved. Around her, sticky notes with messages and ideas for improvements covered her project's display, left by curious festival participants eager to contribute. "Every superhero has their own story," Spider-Man said, straightening up, preparing to swing away. "But the most important heroes aren't the ones who wear masks. They're the ones who make the world a little better every day, despite all obstacles. Remember, never let anyone tell you your dreams are too big or that you don't deserve them." With that, he shot a web and soared into the sky, leaving behind a hall filled with new hopes and possibilities. Somewhere below, unnoticed in the crowd, Peter Parker stood with a quiet smile, watching as small acts of kindness and science changed lives for the better. Because true heroes aren't defined by superpowers or wealth, but by how they use their talents to help others and inspire good. And today proved that even one person standing up for justice can change everything.